Taiwanese elections are tomorrow, January 13th. And this is a big deal. The entire international community is watching. The Taiwanese people will be electing their nation's parliament and their president. Now, China is currently opposed to the current ruling party of Taiwan, which is the Democratic Progressive Party. These guys are Western aligned, socially liberal, social democrat light. That's kind of where their politics lay. And China is against them wholeheartedly. Xi is framing the election as a choice between war and peace, prosperity and decline. Xi delivered a fresh warning to this effect in his New Year's Eve speech when he declared that the reunification of the motherland is a historical inevitability. The Taiwanese people are in danger, and America needs to be completely prepared for this. It is vital that we are prepared for this.
And I assume they are. I mean, again, this rhetoric from Xi is not unclear.
Right. It is blatant and blatantly obvious. If we're unprepared, it's our fault.
Totally. Absolutely.
So the ruling party of Taiwan, like I said, is the Democratic Progressive Party. It is aligned with the West, democratic values, and they have been a good partner to the United States. Now, the front runner in this race is the DPP. This is the current ruling party, like I said, and it champions Taiwan's de facto sovereignty and separate identity from China completely. That's basically what this party's platform is. These elections in Taiwan, we'll talk about this, but is really boiling down to Chinese influence. How much do you want it? How much do you hate it? Except for one of the candidates, but we'll get into that. The current party's front runner, Lai Ching-te, he originally advocated for a hard line push for independence, a hardline push, specifically saying he wants to break up what's going on. He wants to totally get out of the Chinese one China ambiguity and declare his independence. But he has since moderated this position, actually because of signs from Washington. Washington basically alluded that this was way too intense of rhetoric, and they don't want to poke the bear that is China right now.
Exactly. They need to stay in a gray area. And I think that Xi's rhetoric might be just coercion tactics to try to prevent voting for a candidate that's too anti-China. Mm-hmm. But again, this is all dynamic, right? So the more that this Taiwanese president goes against China, the more that they threaten separation from China, the more likely it is that she actually does make a military move and everything goes to hell.
Exactly. And this guy, Lai, has said that so Beijing is totally against the DPP and have called the leading candidate a war maker and a destroyer of cross-strait peace. I like what you said. I think you're right. They are trying specifically to convince the people of Taiwan to vote against the DPP for the purposes of keeping peace between China and Taiwan. Mm-hmm. They're trying to scare the Taiwanese people into voting against their interests here.
Totally.
So now, in opposition, we have the KMT. This is the old ruling party of the Republic of China that goes back 100 years ago. But this party blames the DPP, the Democratic People's Progressive Party, for provoking China. And they advocate peaceful relations. I put that in quotations because is what's going on right now truly peaceful relations? It's hard for me to truly tell if this is technically peaceful. It seems like there's so much backwards coercion going on that calling this peaceful is very difficult.
It is difficult, especially because not confrontation, that's not the word. Tensions have been rising. China's been running more military exercises near Taiwan, right? It's been flying more of its aircraft around the island. It's trying to scare it more and more clearly. Mm-hmm. So no, there haven't been any attacks between the island and the mainland, but it's hard to call it purely peaceful.
Exactly. So the KMT is pushing for keeping an open dialogue with the Chinese, but what's most importantly is boosting their economic ties. So the DPP is basically looking to almost, we say this word a lot too, decouple from China in their economic, because they don't want to be reliant on China at all. Mm-hmm. And they totally want to be reliant on the Western markets, South Korea, Japan, Australia, the United States, India to an extent. They want to be involved with those countries. They don't want to be involved with China. The KMT is the opposite of that spectrum. Then we have another interesting candidate, Ko Wen-je. Ko Wen-je, he is the leader of the Taiwan's People's Party, the TPP, which was founded only in 2019, a very new party. And his candidacy is really interesting to me because he's not really talking about the China problem. He is focusing his campaign on bread and butter issues specifically. He's talking about the rising cost of housing, and he's talking about stagnant wages. He's very, very popular with young people and with members of the working class. That is where his lane is.
Interesting.
He's really not trying to make this election about China. He's trying to go above that. Now, I will say this person was previously in the KMT. So on his Chinese stances, he may be more KMT leaning in that regard, but that is not the focus of his campaign. He's focused on economic issues.
It's very interesting to me because, okay, based on the coalitions you say he has, which are working class people and younger people, it sounds like progressives to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet these bread and butter issues, that doesn't sound like progressive politics to me. That sounds like Republican politics to me.
You think?
Do you not think?
Well, rising housing costs and stagnant wages?
No, you're right. Progressives do talk about that. Okay, maybe I'm
No, but I do think I know what you're talking about. Republicans always say that they care about the cost of living and all of that, with inflation being a problem, but
Yes.
they blame it on things other. I don't know the intricacies of his political ideology, so I can't say where his critiques of these problems come from.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
well, maybe it's just different in Taiwan, where the China shadow looms so large that it makes sense to talk about the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, and the Kuomintang,
Yeah.
I can try, the KMT, in that, from that perspective. And when you talk about working class people and young people, it's like they have other more personal things that are more pressing to worry about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think and look, we talk in the United States all the time. The United States doesn't care about foreign policy that much. The electorate doesn't care. Our government cares a lot, but our electorate, we don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
We voted for Obama because he was against the war in Iraq, right? That's why we voted for Obama.
Okay.
One of the many reasons. But now I want to go back to Taiwan here. Taiwan is seeing an increase in anti-Chinese sentiment. Less than 3% of the people in Taiwan identify themselves primarily as Chinese.
Wow.
And less than 10% support an immediate or eventual unification.
Yeah.
So it has now become extremely popular to be against Chinese unification. And if China goes in and invades Taiwan, they're going to have a hell of a fight on their hands if these numbers are accurate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, they're definitely going to have a hell of a fight on their hands. It's not China invading Taiwan. I mean, I've listened to podcasts. I've read some articles about the potential here. Like, it would not. We thought Russia going into Ukraine would be easy.
Right.
Would be them wiping them out. Right. Taiwan is a small island, and China is the second largest country in the world with a massive economy. But the fact that they're an island, like, it would be, and they're a far more advanced economy than Ukraine, like, it would be an absolute brutal dogfight. And I just think about how the Chinese culture has to be so much different from the Taiwanese culture, having evolved for the past 60, 70 years in democracy and like in a liberal democracy.
Democracy versus autocracy.
Exactly.
This is the perfect epitome of that moment.
Yes, with massive, oh, I'm forgetting the word, and it's such an obvious, easy word, where the government clamps down on the communication that happens in a place.
Censorship?
Yes, with enormous censorship in China and Taiwan totally connected to the rest of the world. Like, it's just, it wouldn't make any sense for the Taiwanese to really identify with the Chinese besides they look like us.
Right. That's the only thing they have left truly in common. They have totally integrated themselves with Western markets, Western media, Western values.
Exactly.
So there's not much left of the Beijing relationship to unify on.
Totally.
Now, again, ahead of the election, China is putting the pressure. They are sending fighter jets over the country, drones, warships to patrol around the waters. They have flown balloons over the island. And the Taiwanese defense minister is saying that this is psychological warfare to affect the morale of our people. This goes two ways for China, I think. I think it either truly reignites a flame for Taiwanese, I shouldn't say reignites, just continues to grow the flame of Taiwanese independence feeling within the hearts of the Taiwanese people, and it makes them angry that they have to live in fear of this autocratic state across their shores, or it makes them scared. And I think this election is in between, are you scared, or are you going to stand up for your independence in Taiwan? That's how I view the election. I'm not Taiwanese. I'm not there.
Yeah.
This is from a Western audience, but
so which way do you think it falls?
Well, if we look at current polling, the DPP sits at 36%, the KMT sits at 31%, and that third party candidate, the TPP, sits at 24%. Polling in Taiwan, from what I've seen, has been fairly accurate as compared to the United States polling. So there is a chance that these polls are accurate and the DPP wins outright. We'll have to see. If I had to bet on it, I would say DPP pulls through, which would be the first time in Taiwan's history that the same party rules the country for 3 consecutive presidential terms.
Wow.
It would be a big deal.
Okay.
That's what makes it hard for the DPP right now is they've already had 2 consecutive presidents. There has never been a third consecutive president of the same party in the country's history.
Okay. Yeah, it's really hard for me. So I recently read a paper on the sentiments of the Ukrainian people on the invasion of Russia and like basically how far would you want to go in fighting this war?
I'm sorry, do you mean the Russian people in the invasion of Ukraine?
No.
Oh, you mean the Ukrainian people in the invasion of their country by Russia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, and the paper what the paper found is like they don't really care about how much they have to lose to maintain their country. They don't care about the losses of men, of soldiers. They want all of their land and they want to fight down to the last bit for it. And maybe my view is colored from that, but I just imagine that a Taiwanese person would want to say fuck the man,
right,
more than they would want to say let's make sure they don't come for us.
Right. I agree. And I feel like now, if you're Taiwanese, the U.S. has your back more than ever right now.
We're selling them weapons.
Right.
We're talking with them all the time. Absolutely.
I do want to say just one more thing about these polling averages. It is kind of interesting that the KMT is on this upward trajectory. There was a point over the last few months where the KMT was actually below that third-party candidate.
Yeah.
And only recently, over the last few months, the KMT started catching up.
I agree, which does seem to imply that China's aggression has had an effect.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It seems like there was something going on there.
Although there's also been that rise has really tapered off in the past month, which is when China's aggression has gone even further.
Yes, but you know what? Because I'm not an expert on Taiwanese politics, there was something else I read that I forgot. You see that gray line at the bottom?
Someone dropped out.
That was a dropout.
I see.
And that person that party then aligned with the KMT.
Oh, okay.
So 2 parties combined to make the current KMT ticket.
Yeah.
That's why we saw the increase. That makes a lot more sense. Because if you add those 2 together, it's exactly where he's at now.
Yep.
So, okay. That adds up.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the Taiwanese election, folks. If you're in Taiwan and you're watching this video, that's fucking awesome. Go vote.
Yeah. Please vote. God, it'll be so fun to talk about that.
I know.
And I feel like I shouldn't say it's so fun to talk about that.
No, because it's
your
lives. It's literally your livelihood. It's the threat of you being invaded by China. God forbid. Oh my God. Our hearts are with you, and so will our weapons be with you as well.